It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into an episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith, and this is an interesting setup. It's almost like an afternoon drive / draft talk hybrid episode here. We got Alan Saunders and Nick Farabaugh, not only both on the show, but literally on the same screen right now in the same picture. What's going on, fellas?
I feel like we're in like a weird episode of Hollywood Squares where like,
Yeah.
You fool! Gilbert Gottfried and Bruce Valanche have ended up in the same square and hilarity ensues. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
We're doing well. We're in the indoor again.
Yeah, well, as soon as Alan joined, I was like, look at this backdrop. And so I like that this is taking place here. Love that we got both you guys down there. And the reason being down there, the Steelers introducing first round pick Troy Fautanu today, press conference. We'll dive into that. Anything today that was said of note to you guys, first and foremost? I want to talk about the pick, obviously, and get into what this means now for day two. But anything said today in his press conference that you maybe caught your ear?
I think the biggest one was that he's played every position in practice. I guess not game, experience, and he only has game experience really at left guard and left tackle. Significant game experience. I think he played like 2 snaps at right tackle in a game, but honestly, I haven't even gone back and watched those. That could be a kneel down for all I know. So I think that's interesting because I think it kind of leads credence to this fact that we kind of talked about last night that he's probably going to be the one to flip. Omar Khan at the combine I think clearly said that they drafted Broderick Jones to be a left tackle. So I think, Broderick's going to move back to the left tackle, and I think Fautanu is probably going to be your right tackle. So I think that was kind of the big thing is that, okay, he's played there before, right? He at least has experience there. Like, you're not starting from the ground up. I remember when Dan Moore came in 2021, like he was saying he had never played right tackle, not in practice, never. So I think that's a good start. I think that leads credence to the fact that we talked about he's 5-position versatile along the line. I think he's going to stick a tackle, but a lot of the press conference was about kind of how he became a Steelers fan, his Steelers fandom. The people in his life very clearly has a very strong family around him and kind of support system on top of that. But in terms of on the football field, I think that was kind of the biggest one.
Yeah, I'm not really surprised by that. He played the left side of Washington for a left-handed quarterback, so he's playing the blind side on like waggles and play actions and bootlegs. He's so I think it's there's a lot of similarities between what he did and look, as much as Washington used him in space. Like a lot of the run blocking assignments are going to be more similar to what you would ask a normal right tackle to do in the run blocking game anyway. Certainly pass protection, there may be some adjustments in terms of his footwork, but I'm not overly concerned about him moving. I don't think anybody else should be. I think he's a good player that could play well at just about any spot on the offensive line if you really wanted him to, and I'm glad he thinks the same.
I really like, though, pairing up Broderick and Sayamalo because I know that they're going to run a lot of wide zone, but some of the stuff we saw them do last year, like counter and power that they pulled out, trap, that has those double pulls or the tackle guard pulling. I think your best 2 pullers on that line are probably Broderick and Sayamalo. I think, I think Fautanu is a really good player in space and he can pull. But in terms of, actually getting on space, I like him more as a screen blocker, kind of getting out in wide zone, runs out in front. So that's where I kind of like him. I really like the idea of if you're on that right side of the line and you have Isaac and Broderick coming right at you, I mean, good luck. I think, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are going to eat on those. And I also think it kind of speaks to me to, yes, the wide zone run scheme that Arthur Smith runs a ton of is going to be there. But I think some of the stuff that they had at the end of last year, the gap concepts that we saw them implement with, from the Rams specifically, are probably here to stay a little bit. And I also think that it's probably part of the reason Pat Meyer and Eddie Faulkner are still around to keep some continuity in run game schematics.
Stuff like crack toss and trap that they ran very well last year, I don't think are just going to go away.
Yeah, I agree.
Outside of him talking about being, 5-position versatile and him working along the line, Alan, did you find anything interesting besides that about what he said?
I thought it was interesting just hearing him talk about his family. I think that's an important part of the story for a young man. I think one of the things that look, I mean, we watch the tape, we go to the Senior Bowl, we go to the pro days, we go to the combine, we watch all the video, we talk to scouts. I think we as people that are very close to the game but are not inside the game have a pretty good idea of what Troy Fautanu is going to be like as a player. But I think when you look at the biggest busts and the worst draft picks, you go look back, it becomes about the person more than the player, and how he's going to deal with adversity, how he's going to learn, how he's going to grow, how he's going to respond to leadership, and how he's going to be coached. And, I just sounded like someone who's very focused on family, someone who's very grounded. I thought his answer yesterday about when he got to meet Troy Polamalu on a recruiting trip, USC. Troy Polamalu's an alum, actually brought Troy Polamalu in for his recruiting trip because they knew he was a huge Steelers fan and that Troy Polamalu was his idol. And someone asked him, well, how did that not work? Why didn't you go to USC? And he said, well, I knew Troy Polamalu wasn't going to be there every day. And I mean, that's like a funny line, but I also think it just goes to the character of the person, right? A well-grounded individual, someone who's thinking things through more than one layer at a time. And like Nick and I said yesterday, sometimes on the tape, there is some anger. So he plays with an edge, but you want the person that can turn it off. You want Troy Polamalu, right? An absolute Tasmanian devil on the field and one of the quietest, most soft-spoken, introspective people I've ever met. It certainly seems like he's kind of picked up that piece of it from his idol there, and I think that's a good sign. Like if you look at some of their draft misses, a guy like Artie Burns or Devin Bush, I'm not sure you would have the same reaction to their first press conference. So if you really want to learn something from today, I think that's what I'm going to take away from it.
Yeah, and I did get to talk to his dad a little bit, and you can tell the influence his dad on him. He is like, in terms of attitude, like very similar to his dad. It really, he's a quiet guy, very, very, very kind of introspective, intelligent player. I mean, you look at his. We talked about that yesterday. How he's like this mix of a brawler, but he's a very smart brawler. So you're not going to get him kind of being over aggressive or anything in his game. I think it also kind of speaks off the field. This is a guy to me. I'll say this: this guy I think has C in his future on his chest. I didn't necessarily think Broderick did last year. I think Broderick can grow into that. I love Broderick.
There's a much younger rookie also.
He's a much younger guy, but Broderick's like the energy of the room, right? He's like the spark plug of the room. Fautanu's like the leader of that room. I think he was the leader of that O-line. He was one of the leaders of
and a very good O-line.
Yeah, if you talk to anybody from Washington, when I was at the Combine and talking to guys like Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, Michael Penix, they'll tell you who the leader was. It was Troy Fautanu. And I think to lead a group like that speaks volumes to the type of player that they are getting. So I would not be surprised if the C patch is on Troy Fautanu's jersey sometime very early in his career. He's already
metaphorical C patch because the Steelers don't actually.
Yes, they should though. Maybe put the C patch on there because it's cool and good aesthetics.
No, it's bad aesthetics. It's cluttered. It looks awesome.
I'm very excited to get to know him more as a person, but I want to go back to the player stuff. We'll get into like the evaluation stuff, but I want to know for the two of you, my reaction is literally on camera last night when the Steelers selected Troy Fautanu. What was your guys' reaction? Because I think a lot of people were just like, there's like just watching him slide down the board. Even with him getting there, I was like, this seems like one of those cases where I would have thought the entire time it was going to be Graham Barton, but like this is the guy that maybe pushes that away and makes you second guess.
Let me peel back the curtain a little bit behind our writing process. So throughout the week, on Monday, Alan said, we need a Troy Fautanu scouting profile. We tried to get the scouting profile out on all potential first-round picks, and I think we covered just about everybody. But the Monday before, we didn't have Troy Fautanu, and we kind of were like, okay, let's do this. And then he started falling, and it was the Bengals were on the clock, Mims goes off, and we had pre-written Amarius Mims and Graham Barton. Troy Fautanu, and I was like, I guess we got to get him going. I think it's a good thing we did because I'm going to be real, man. I didn't expect him to be there. I wasn't surprised when he was the pick. I was surprised when they got on the clock at 20th overall. When Jared Verse was the pick for the Rams, I was a little shocked. Not because of Verse being the pick, but because Fautanu was there. And I think that
the only thing that was weird to me was that Terrion Arnold was there too, and Quinyon Mitchell. And like those weren't guys I had any inkling of being there. I thought they would take the best tackle. I was very confident that they would take a tackle if it was one of the top 6 tackles ahead of Graham Barton. I really believe in Omar Khan's vision of value, and that was going to play out in that way. But you get lots of value from a top cornerback too. Like
Sure.
like at that, like the difference between Arnold and Fautanu is just preference. And I'll be honest, those weren't players that I had put a lot of thought into what the Steelers' preference might be, because I thought that both be gone. And so it was very funny listening to Mike Tomlin talk about being at the Alabama Pro Day to learn about Fautanu, because of course the Washington offensive coaching staff had at that point
Yeah.
gone to Alabama, and so he's there instead of going to Washington, and ends up learning about his first round pick. But it very well could have been there trying to learn about Terry Arnold. So that was interesting, and we broke the streak, so we can finally stop talking about how the Steelers will never take a player that their general manager and head coach did not go to his pro day.
I will say, I think it still is going to carry weight though, because they did a roundabout way of.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Right.
I mean, they basically did go to a pro day.
I think it's like you just have to add some common sense to it.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
But
I don't think there are always going to be exceptions.
I don't think they go to a pro day. They don't need to see Troy Fautanu do his kick steps and go in space. I think what they're doing that is to find out who he is.
And we just talked.
Yeah, and they didn't need to, because they found out everything they needed.
Also have a ton of background because of
Mark Bruner, which is also something to kind of watch today, where we're talking about two Washington wideouts and Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan, who they have not put a ton of work into. But I mean, if there's going to be a surprise pick, a la Juju Smith-Schuster in 20.
I have Jalen McMillan mocked to the Steelers at pick 84. I don't think it's a surprise to me.
It wouldn't be a surprise, but remember in 2017 when they took Juju Smith-Schuster, no interest on their radar. Well, guess who teed him in on Juju Smith-Schuster? Lynn Swann was the athletic director at UC. So they have an in there with Mark Bruner. So that's just something to watch too here. I think the in with Mark Bruner made them a lot more confident.
Day 3, Eddie Olafosio too.
I think a lot of these guys.
Let's get into day 2 next.
Yeah, so that's where we can go now.
Or
obviously,
do we want to talk about the grades first? Do we want to grade the pick first and then don't talk about
that? Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So also for
Nick already wrote his grade out, so let him go first since he's already on the record, and then you and I can choose to agree or disagree.
Okay. So, I mean, my grade I gave this was an A. I think it's perfect marriage of fit, value, premium position. I think that clearly this team got better last night. I think, that's a big thing. It's not just about, what the value is. Okay, they could have taken Brock Bowers and they would have been a better football team, but they still would have had 4 huge holes on the team. They just filled one of them. Offensive tackle is not a hole anymore on this team. In fact, it's quite good now. The depth chart is also nice.
It's not a hole until like 2040.
Exactly. Fautanu, Broderick Jones, you have a nice swing tackle, or at least backup tackle in Dan Moore, and you have a nice 4th developmental guy in Dylan Cook. There's your tackle depth chart. I mean, Spencer Anderson too, if you want to throw him in there. They have everything they need at the tackle position. So this is better, but I just the value of it all, to get a guy that I think is a top 10 player in this class at number 20th overall at the tackle position. This is not a position that falls down boards. And the reason that did is because there were so many of them. But to get him at 20, I mean, it's a home run pick to me. There's very little downside, even if he doesn't work out at tackle. We've talked about this. James Daniels is a free agent next year. They can kick him into guard. And for what he's probably going to be a guard, if he is a guard, he can do just fine there. It's a great pick, good process. I think everything about this screams home run pick, so I gave it an A.
I'll give it an A with the condition that he sticks at tackle. I think if he can't stick at tackle for whatever reason, whether it's the knee injuries or just can't make the transition to the NFL level, then I think you're going to look at Terry and Arnold down the road and Quinyon Mitchell down the road and think, maybe that would have been a better pick if he ends up being a guard. But if he stays a tackle, I think this is an A. And I honestly I have a hard time making an argument for them taking a different player. I've really liked Terry Arnold and Quinyon Mitchell, but it is the cornerback is just not as serious of a need for the team. Tackle is an even more premium position than corner is. I don't know what else they could have done. Trade back, maybe. I guess that's the other thing that they could have tried to do. But I really like this pick.
Yeah, if they would have traded back and still landed one of those 3 that we've talked about or something like that. But I'm actually going to go A+ on this. And here's the reason. Very similarly to Nick, I have him as the number 11 player in this class. They got him at number 20. And to bring in Derek Bell's rankings, he had him at 7. So even higher than the ones here. Also, go watch his breakdown. 30 minutes of tape on him on his YouTube channel. But here's why it's an A+ and not an A, guys. He's also a Steelers fan. Now, I'm not saying everybody that they draft needs to be a Steelers fan, but I think he gets an extra little golden star by his name for that reason, because he already understood what it takes to be a Pittsburgh Steeler before becoming a Pittsburgh Steeler. I think he's obviously a great cultural fit. I think he understands what it means to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, and he's just going to bring that on and carry on the tradition. So hit it out of the
I
park
do
in
love
round
them
one.
adding to the Polynesian part of the Steelers locker room, which continues to get bigger and bigger. We've got you know,
Oos.
Braden Fajoko's there. We've got Isaac
Mhm.
Seumalo. We've got two Hawaiians and the Herbig brothers. I mean, like we should have pineapple on the menu like every day.
Was Roman Wilson next?
Oh, could be. There you go.
We do acknowledge Troy Fautanu on this podcast. So let's talk about round two now. Let's kind of reset here. We've checked a box, obviously, in round one, a massive box that they needed to check, but still a lot of work to do here. Still don't have a center, unless, of course, like we're talking about with Fautanu, who ends up being the center. But let's operate as if that's not the case right now. Wide receiver still in play, slot corner still in play, and then obviously some depth needs down the board there. Alan, you put out, an adjusted mock draft, obviously now with round one being over, the players that are left on the board for day two, and we can dive into that a little bit. But how do we kind of see this playing out? Because you actually, in that mock draft, which we can get into, did not go with any of the routes that I just laid out for the first pick.
Well, I mean, it wasn't because of a lack of want to. I mean, I think if they want Zach Frazier, they probably have to come up at least a little bit. I mean, we talked yesterday. Carolina is a team with with a pick at 39. They already had one pick at the end of this. That was actually, they traded up to get in the end of the first round, but I think they will take a center. I mean, I think one of these guys is going off the board there, and I think you look at Philly with those two picks at 50 and 53, kind of straddling the Steelers. If there's one center left or one interior lineman left, because they could kind of play them center or guard, and like their other need is maybe linebacker, which hasn't been touched yet. Why wouldn't they go with a Zach Frazier first? And so I think if the Steelers want to be sure they get him, they'll move up. I'm not sure that's what they're going to do. I think they may stay and wait. That's what I don't see them moving up. Again, I talk about the value. They need a bunch of different high picks. I don't know how much Omar Khan is going to want to pay. Now, moving up two picks in the second round to get ahead of Philly, that would not cost very much. But I think he's going to be hesitant to make a big swing up the board just because of all the needs they do have, and it's not for a premium position. If you're moving way up to go get, you really think that AD Mitchell is the best wide receiver left on the board, and he makes it to 35, you're 40, and you're like, all right, let's just go get him. Okay, fine. I can get on board with that. Trading up 10 picks to get a center, I don't know that I see the value in it, even though it is a strong need.
It's interesting because I think to really get this thing going and accentuating the offensive strengths, I think they need that center. So I get it's not a premium position, but for the position they're in right now, I think it needs to happen. And the reason I say that is, I mean, listen, I just don't believe in Nate Herbig as the center. And so maybe the backup plan is, I don't know, Christian Haynes, if they are they willing to kick James Daniels to center. Maybe there. But I don't. Yeah, right. But we haven't seen any indication of Fautanu or Daniels going to center. So I think they have to get Frazier, Powers, Johnson. I think some of the guys that are left on the board, when you talk about DeJean, McKinstry, Newton, you have all these guys, the receivers. I think some other teams that are at the top, like the Chargers, for example, they need a corner and a receiver. They might go with, a Ladd McConkey or a Keon Coleman or a Kool-Aid McKinstry instead of taking Jackson Powers Johnson and Zach Frazier. I think you and I would probably agree Powers Johnson's going to be off first. The longer that first guy lasts, the likelier it is the second guy.
If the first guy gets past Carolina at 39, I think there's a very good chance one of them gets.
I agree.
So I don't see the Steelers moving up. And now, like, what happens if? So I guess the other question is, let's say one goes at 34, and then do they feel the need to get ahead of Carolina because they're concerned, or do they just say, okay, never mind, it's going to be Cedric Van Pran in the third round? I don't think that's a bad fallback option.
I mean, it's not a terrible option, but I also think that, if you're not going, center, you're probably going receiver. Maybe one of those corner falls. I don't know. Kool-Aid falls to 51. I think you have to take him, right? Like, maybe you do.
Sanders still.
Yeah, Sanders still is. Max Melton, I think, even has to be in consideration at that spot. But we're talking about what else would you do? Corner, I think probably the likeliest option, or receiver. So those two, I think the receivers are going to come off very fast just because the value's there, and there's a lot of receiver needy teams.
I think we've talked a lot about there being this like sort of second round cluster at wide receiver. I feel like that is moving up, right? When you see guys like Ricky Pearsall going in the first round, like I think this wide receiver cluster, if the Steelers get one, it's going to be the last one. Like I think that like the board I have has Malachi Corley being the top guy on the board. I would not take him at 51.
Listen, I continue to think this veteran wide receiver trade that we are anticipating is coming. I just do. I mean, the timing of the restructuring for Alex Highsmith, I don't think it was that necessarily there's something imminent to happen, but I think it was anticipating exactly what is happening right now. So this is why I think center is the very clear plan. I think they'll move up a little bit. If one of them's there, maybe they have to get over Green Bay. But Green Bay is apparently calling them move up, probably for Cooper DeJean right now. So they can take themselves out of it. I mean, there's a lot of variables to kind of go with this, but I really think center is plan A, and I think a vet receiver. I think Cortland Sutton is just such a nice kind of mid-round option. He's not a elite player, but he's a solid 2. Pickens can be the alpha still in that. They're similar, but not too similar. It's like not, so redundant, especially with Arthur Smith's offense. When you play with condensed sets, play action shots over the middle, it's okay to have overlapping skill sets. It's not, like a premium drop back offense.
And if you're going to play 12, like you're going to be balanced anyway. It doesn't really matter.
So they give up, 98, say, for Cortland Sutton. What I think it allows them to do is, okay, Frazier, Jackson Powers Johnson. And then I think at 84, it really allows them to open up whatever they want. They can go take Andrew Phillips. They can take a D lineman that might fall.
Well, I haven't gone D line in the second round.
I know you do.
I don't think it's what they're going to do, but it's a bad board, and I think that was the best pick I had available.
I will say, I think I wouldn't completely discount them going there, but I also don't think the value is going to be great at D line. Like I don't think Chris Jenkins is going to make it. I know that's your pick. Yeah. I don't think he'll make it.
No, I don't think he will either. But that's why I took him, because he was there, and I thought he was just the best player.
But I think it's a little early for Rupa Roro.
Yeah, I agree.
Or whoever.
In fact, I literally mocked the Rams taking Roro next and said it was a reach.
Yeah, and I think Roro's a reach. I think Fiskey's a little early too. So I think the D line cluster. Dude, I mean. I saw, Mason Smith might sneak in the second round. That's really early for me. I know they're interested in him, so I suppose we have to consider that. But I really think center is the option here. They have clearly shown interest in all top 3 centers. I know they have backup plans probably in McCormick. I think I'm honestly, I'm not even kidding. I think McCormick would be likelier than Matt Brand just because of the 30 visit. When they show interest in small school guys, you better listen up because they don't draft small school guys very often. So we'll see. I think McCormick will be a guard to center conversion, which is, PTSD, 3rd round. So this is why I just think, I think they're tired of messing around with this line. You don't release Mason Cole and not fill that void if you're not planning to get a definitive guy that's going to pop in there. And I think that's what they're going to do. And I think the receiver market, I mean, you just have more options, right? I mean, the 49ers guys, Adam Schefter hinted last night that not only are Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk getting called about, Jawan Jennings is getting calls. I mean, I think Jawan Jennings would be a perfect fit for the Steelers if they could get him. They would have to give him an extension, but it wouldn't be super expensive. But you have Sutton out there. And then even beyond that, Tyler Boyd is still out there. If you really want to, just sign Tyler Boyd. I mean, they could.
I think there's a lot of options at wide receiver compared to center. So I understand the rush. I'm just not sure. Like, do you think if they stay at 51, one of them is there?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's 50-50. I think Frazier has a shot to be there.
I think so too. And I agree with about 50-50. What do you do? Do you sit there like Omar had the diamond hands in the first round, right? Like Fautanu's falling. He didn't trade up. He said he had the option to. Sat there, waited. What do you think?
I got asked this exact same question like 10 minutes before we jumped on here. My prediction for tonight, I think they move up from 51 and move back at 84 and 98 to secure a center.
It's possible.
My question is, obviously, like we've talked about the fit of Jackson Powers Johnson and how seamless it would be for Arthur Smith. How do you feel about the fit of Zach Frazier, though? Because I feel like he's clearly like behind Barton and Jackson Powers Johnson because of the athleticism, but is he athletic enough to fit the system and make it work?
I think he probably is. I don't think he's an elite athlete, but I think he's a good enough athlete.
I think you lose some top end upside. Like I don't think Zach Frazier has like Hall of Famer potential. Like I think like not to say that they're gonna be, but like I think when you lose the elite athleticism, you kind of lose the top end of the upside. But I'll be honest, I
Yeah.
think if Zach Frazier and Jackson Powers Johnson were in this practice facility right now competing to play a game this Sunday, I think I would pick Frazier. Like I think he's more ready right now. And so you kind of give up a little bit on the high end to get back a little bit more readiness, I think, and that's the trade-off. But I don't think it's a bad fit. Like I'm not worried about him fitting this scheme. Tough, advanced at leverage. Really a smart blocker. Like maybe you're not going to pull with him as much as you would, but they have a really good pulling guard and two super athletic tackles, so you can find a way to
Yeah.
make it happen.
I do think, if they are so bent on athleticism, that's when we're going to see this move up the board. Like if they are
To get Powers Johnson.
yeah, if they're like, okay, we don't trust Frazier to go out and get those reach blocks, and I wouldn't blame them for that necessarily because, again, look at the athletic traits that Arthur Smith centers have. It's really tough. But I will say, Zach Frazier kind of reminds me of the first center he had in Tennessee, Ben Jones. I think there's some similarities there. And Ben Jones did not test like a sparky athlete. I think actually his RAS is like 4.6. But you look at his tape and he was getting out there. And I think Frazier's very similar, not an elite athlete. And on film, you don't see an elite athlete.
Better athletes than that. I think his RS is in the sevens, somewhere
But
like that.
the game speed, it's solid. Like he gets out there. I've seen him reach those linebackers. I think he can do it. And so, I like Zach Frazier. I don't think he's ever going to be a superstar. I don't think he's going to be a top 5 center. I think he can be in that 5 to 15 range of centers. That again, I just think he's a rock solid player in the middle. I think that's what you need. And we've talked about this too. How important A gap pressure is when you have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. How do you keep them in the pocket as much as you can if you were the Steelers, right?
That's where his strength is that there just are not mistakes in his tape. Like he is a very, very solid, dependable guy.
I agree.
And I think that's a real benefit for this offense, even if it's not necessarily like the best scheme fit for the way they run. I think when you look at the entirety of what this offense needs, I think that's going to be very beneficial.
I agree. I think that really is kind of where I come back to is they need the center because, you don't want Russ just losing his mind because he knows A-gap pressure is going to be coming significantly when he has 4 good linemen. You don't need, one bad apple in the middle here.
90 sacks and 20 fumbles between Russ and Justin Fields.
Russ and Justin Fields are going to get sacked.
You got to protect them.
They're going to get sacked a lot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to happen anyways just because they're bad pocket managers, but you want to mitigate that as much as possible. And Russ was at his best when Seattle had some of their better offensive line.
And they are mobile guys. So when you eliminate the up the middle pressure, you give them a chance, right?
I will say, I'm kind of interested if they turn this offensive line into a real strength. I don't think we've seen Fields with an offensive line since Ohio State that has really, given him like a clean pocket. Then I don't think, the pocket management kind of tendencies with Fields are just going to disappear like that. But the rushing upside, I think, increases exponentially with Justin Fields. Can you imagine them just like running option and Fautanu just leading him?
And Jalen Warren,
right?
blocking too.
It can work, right?
Come on, like
Darnell coming out,
right? Like when you get the extra blocker and you're running, your offensive linemen are really good run blockers. Like quarterback runs become deadly. I think it could be even if Russell Wilson is the starting quarterback. I think it could be a part of this offense where they use Justin Fields as like a package running quarterback because it looks like it could be really damaging.
It could be, but they need that center, and that's what I really think they need. So I'm kind of all on the train of going Frazier or Powers Johnson at 51 personally. I understand that there's a massive hole at receiver, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they double down at receiver, and by that I mean
find a way to get to,
trade for a vet and
draft one.
Yeah,
maybe it's Anaya Smith or Luke McCaffrey in the 4th round.
I could see it. And then 3rd round, if they don't get one of those centers. I keep going back and forth on Cedric Van Brandt because he's the clear other option. Guys like Bordelimi, Norzed, McCormick, Limmer, good players, but
wouldn't take any of them before the 4th round, even though like I have.
I can take Bordelini.
I have McCormick mocked at like 88 to the Packers, but like
I think McCormick or Bordelini are worth the 98th pick.
Maybe I don't know.
I think they are.
I think I would wait,
but
I don't think they're that much better. They're not that much better than the other guys that I would want to take them ahead.
I mean, but they're not day one starters. I kind of get it, but I think Van Pran can be. I think he really skews the line, but I think Van Pran is kind of Frazier, but like a little less consistent, like
and maybe a little bit more
maybe a little bit more better in
upside.
space.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more athletic
he'll be there at
upside, but
84,
less consistent. I think he'll be there at 90. I haven't getting to 98. I think he'll be there for sure.
If that's probably their backup plan, but I have to imagine they're going to try and get Powers Johnson and Frazier here and double down the O line. I'm just taking Omar's words for him and how much the bigs matter. And hey, if the bigs matter that much, we might get out of day two with a D line pick too. It could happen.
I believe that at some point this offseason, Smitty, I said that they might get 1,000 pounds a player in the first 3 picks. Didn't I say that?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I said that at some point.
You did. I want to get some predictions, but maybe a bit of news. And if you're listening, not watching, I'm putting that in quotes here. Jordan Schultz saying, while the 49ers are listening on offers for Debo Samuel, the Patriots and Bills are not 2 teams that he would be looking at to trade for him. They're not in that conversation.
I think it's pretty clear that right now, if this trade is happening, it's happening for a 2025 first round pick at this point. And I think that, well, with either of them, really, because
Debo fetch a first
or something, like a
2025 pick is
2025 pick, right?
Yeah.
Like, unless they're going to trade Debo for somebody's second, like in the next 4 hours, I guess that's possible. But like I think that makes, like, if you're the 49ers, it opens so many more teams to the conversation by dealing in 2025 draft picks.
And also, like, why rush the Ayuk negotiations, man? You have no rush with that. Like,
and they can afford to sign him.
Right.
I mean, sign him.
Listen,
I don't know why they're they're even contemplating this.
If we start to get into training camp and near the start of the preseason and that thing just ain't working, like, okay, at that point, I get it. Like, you start to move them and you lose some leverage.
As long as it's a tradable contract, like, you sign them now and then you deal with it later if it becomes an issue when you got to sign Brock Purdy. Like,
yeah, I mean, listen, I think the smart move for the 49ers is to trade Debo and sign Ayuk if they have to get rid of one of them. But I mean, I was talking about Jawan Jennings. This is another guy that needs an extension, and they've wanted to sign him for an extension. Is it completely possible that they sign Ayuk and trade Jawan Jennings instead and just plug in Pearsall in the slot? Like, I think it could work.
They clearly, with the Pearsall pick, are planning to move on from one of them.
Right. And again,
come on over, Jennings.
I think the Jawan Jennings one could happen today or tomorrow. I think that one could actually happen.
What would you give up for Jawan Jennings? Like, give me a pick value straight up. 119?
I would give 119 for him. I really do. I think he's much better than his production states, and he is a
perfect fit for the offense.
He might be the best block.
Perfect fit for the offense.
Okay, I'm going back and forth between this. I don't know who's the better blocker. I think there's 2 clear top blockers at wide receiver. It's either him or Puka as the top blocker.
I think he's the best blocking.
Yeah, I mean, he's up there, right? He's the
best blocking receiver that's like a regular part of his team. It's not like a blocking specialist.
They could do special things with kind of their offense with Jawan Jennings in there because of what he can do as a blocker. I just think he would work so well with that. The big bodied guy. He's a little different from George. Like, it's perfect enough. Very unselfish player. I think he's perfect for kind of what they want. And they did show interest in him when he came out. So, like, I would not be surprised if they called about Jawan Jennings and kind of saw what that was up. I still think if they're going to be trading for someone tonight, I think Sutton is probably the likeliest option here. I could see them trading 98 straight up for Cortland Sutton. It might be a little rich for my blood, but,
or 84 and get something like a
84
fourth
and like 121.
Yeah,
I think they have. That could work too, but. I think we might see a vet receiver come along here by the end of the night. I
certainly by the end of the weekend. I think there will be. I'll put that down. There will be an NFL,
whether it's a trade signing or
signing. There will be an NFL wide receiver on the roster that is not right now by the end of this weekend. I think so.
And then the other thing was Tony Pauline putting out there on his day 2 notes that the Steelers very much in play at 51. Roman Wilson and Keon Coleman.
Not surprising.
Good players. Well, Roman Wilson to me like screams Pittsburgh Steelers. Reminds me of Hines Ward. Keon Coleman's a project, but he's a big one and he can block. So okay.
Mm-hmm.
Coleman's interesting. I don't know. I'm a little scared of what Coleman does just because of he's a big time contested catch guy. At least was at Florida State, but
not a very good separator. Maybe you use him as a big slot.
He was a much better separator at Michigan State. So I do wonder if there's maybe some untapped potential there in what he can do. Can block. I mean, both these guys can. I know Roman Wilson's smaller, but tries a lot to block. He's really slippery. You saw him just do Quinyon Mitchell wrong so many times at the Senior Bowl. I did think the tape with Roman Wilson was a little bit inconsistent, so we'll see kind of if that's the choice. But
I think both of those guys will not be there. Just my prediction.
I think Roman Wilson will be, but I'm still going.
I think they both.
I still think center.
In the next 10 picks.
All right. Well, you just said predictions. That's what I want to go to next. I don't know if you want to say everybody, but you got to give me at least one name that is going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler after tonight.
All right, Alan, you go first.
I'm sticking with Jalen McMillan.
Would be a really good pick. Would be a really good pick. All right, I'll give you a little mock then. I'll go at 51, Zach Frazier. I'll go at 84, Malachi Corley. And I'll go 98 goes to the Broncos for Cortland Sutton.
Ooh.
That's my prediction.
All right, now I got to think of a different one because Malachi Corley was the one that I had in my mind.
And by the way, it's a pick swap, so they would be get
some back.
So they would have capital still at 119, 121 to.
You said Zach Frazier, right? You said Zach Frazier, Nick.
Yep.
All right, well then, all right, screw it. I'll go Jackson Powers Johnson, and somebody can be right.
Trading up.
Yes.
You're not going to sit and wait. Yeah.
We're trading up at 51, and they're moving back at 84 and 98 to recoup something similar that they gave up.
If they don't trade 98, I'll call my shot. They draft Renardo Green.
Oh,
very good player.
I would love
Renardo. He might be done by then
too.
too.
Anthony Midget though is
very good.
The assistant secondaries coach was Renardo Green's position coach. I do think one of Renardo Green or Jerry and Jones.
I want Jerry and Jones to them at 98 originally, and I think that could very well still happen. Or
there we go.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get out of here and get ready for night 2. But before that, Nick, we'll start with you. Tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, X at Farabaugh FB. Make sure to read the stuff at SteelersNow.com. Hit the notification bell, subscribe, like. I do all that stuff.
Saunders _PGH, PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. And here on this YouTube channel, we will be back after the picks tonight. Smitty will be here in like an hour during the picks tonight. And then we'll be back here again on Saturday at the end of the draft. So we got all kinds of content. So hit that bell so you get the notification so you know what's happening. Also, one video up here on the YouTube channel is that press conference with Troy Fautanu that we were talking about earlier. Check that out. We also got Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin from last night. And today we will have, after the second and third round picks, we'll have the assistant coaches of those positions as they come out. And so stay tuned for all that.
Something tells me that there's going to be quite a bit of content coming out over the weekend at SteelersNow.com. So be sure to stay in touch. Like, subscribe, and hit that note. There always is, but like draft weekend especially. I mean, I don't know. I'm going to have a byline counter this weekend just to see how many stories we can rack up over there. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit us in the comments. Let us know what you think is going to happen on night 2. And I will see the timestamp. So I'll know if you guys waited until after to make a prediction.
Yeah, I wouldn't know anyone that would make an ex post facto prediction and then put it out there.
Did you see how many people actually?
No one I know would do something like that, Zachary Smith, PGH on X.
Did you see how many people thought that was like legit though? Like people were quoting and being like, "No way!" I even got somebody at Barstool to fall for it. Like it was funny. Anyways, you can find me at Zachary Smith PGH for posts just like that. I'll be here all week for stuff like that. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. For Alan Saunders, Nick Farabaugh, and Zachary Smith, this has been another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. Thanks for jumping in with us.